might recognize I'm not in my usual location here. I'll tell you all about this in a minute. But best laid plans, it's just always something. This time it's construction going on. Took out the internet in my building a little bit ago, so I'm at a park across the street, and using my phone connection here, and we're just gonna do what we can here. So give me a moment to get resituated here, and I will get on with the show. So let's go ahead and please everyone just let me know you're here and who's coming in and where you're from, and I'll get some music happening momentarily. Entire screen, share audio. Let's do it that way. Okay. So, how about this? So, everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, coming to you from Wolf Park, I think it's called. Wolf Park, yep, that's the name of it. And we'll see what we can do here. I don't have my usual setup going, but I've come prepared with what I can, and we'll talk about some music. On things. Let's check in on the chat and see if music's happening here. So, so actually what I'm doing here is my phone, my phone is here. My phone is providing the internet connection. I'm tethering, it's called, right? So I'm using the internet connection of my phone to my computer. So my computer is still doing the job, the main job here. The phone is just providing the internet connection, but it does mean I don't have my keyboard, don't have my mixer, don't have my fancy microphone. I don't have all the fancy stuff. So hopefully the music still worked. So great. If the music worked, then we can do what we need to do. And since I had already picked a kind of a topic to focus on as we look at music today, and that topic was melodic development. What this tells me is that what I need to do, all I need to do is talk about melody. And so, yes, this is my Chromebook here, which is normally what I use. I have two different Chromebooks that I use depending on what's going on, but it's almost always a Chromebook I'm broadcasting from. Okay, so since I'm talking about melody primarily, I don't need the whole fancy digital keyboard. Now, you might be thinking, oh, no, he's going to sing. Well, okay, I might sing a little bit, but yeah, I have my recorder. So my recorder, I can, play, and it's kind of fitting, actually, now that I think about it, because this is my father's recorder. He didn't play the recorder, but he did go to a music camp run by the former, the descendants of the Von Trapp family singers. I don't know if any of the actual Von Trapp family singers were still involved in the 70s, but anyhow, in the 70s, he went to a music camp and took recorder lessons for some reason. So this was his recorder. And it was, 1 year ago this weekend when my father passed away. So it'll be kind of nice to see his recorder actually get put to good use. So I'm going to make use of this thing. But because I'm sitting here with a recorder, and as you can maybe see here, I'm actually sitting on a little bit of a hill. So I'm sitting on a hill with a recorder in my hand. How could I not try the following? So, 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 You all know that song, right? Fool on the Hill. There we go. I'm sitting on a hill with a recorder, and that's what they do in the song. So there you go. That was, by the way, entirely played by ear. And I was thinking pretty hard as I did it to make sure I could pull off the melody, because I hadn't really thought about it other than as I sat down on this hill. I'm like, oh, I got to play the Fool on the Hill. But I didn't think it through. I didn't work out the notes ahead of time. I just decided, well, I'm going to see if I can play it by ear. So this skill of playing melodies by ear is definitely, I can't overemphasize. Am I saying this right? Yes. I don't think I could possibly overstate the importance of this skill of having that connection between what you hear and the music that comes out of you. And I'm not saying it has to come out of you by playing the recorder, but it's actually an amazing skill, because really this is the skill. If you're composing, you're hearing something in your head and then you're trying to make it come out of you, right? And put it on paper or put it into MuseScore or do whatever you're doing, improvise on whatever instrument, whatever you're trying to do. It's taking an idea that exists in your head, or maybe playing by ear, like I just was, taking a melody that I've heard before and then just playing it. All these skills are connected. They're all connected by this idea of being able to take an idea that exists only in your mind. Perhaps it exists in your mind because you've previously heard it. Perhaps it's because you're just inventing it. But right now, it's just there in your mind and you need to make it come out, right? And so it's an amazing skill to have. And to me, by far, the most useful way of developing that skill is to practice trying to do exactly what I just did. Can you play that thing by ear? And I talked about that last time in the context of that Barry Manilow song, right? I was trying to plunk it out, and I didn't really have a clear sense of how it went. Eventually, I worked it out, and I posted that. You probably saw that in the whatchamacallit, in the newsletter. This idea that, this connection between the melody and the brain is something, and the ears we really want to work. This is something I want to keep talking about. So I'm going to talk about melodic development just in the context of that one little melody that I just played. So first thing I had to do, by the way, in playing it by ear, was I had to think, what note do I want to start on? Right? I knew I wanted to play it in C. Not because the original is in C. I have no idea what key the original is in, but there's a pretty good chance that it's in C. And it's probably not a recorder; it's a penny whistle or something else. But in any case, I knew I wanted it in C because the recorder really is designed to work well in either C or G. Those are the keys that the recorder is happy playing in, major keys. Other keys require fancy fingering and complicated things that I could pull off, but it's work, right? So, and by the way, I'm looking here, and I think I'm, as far as I know, I'm still live. You all can feel free to just every once in a while comment. So because things are weird for me right now, and I like to know that things haven't gone south. But so if the last Von Trapp just died pretty recently, that's sad. And yeah, maybe she was at that camp in the 70s. That's certainly possible. So I knew I wanted to play it in C, and I had to think about that first note. And I had to think where it was in the scale. And frankly, there was some guesswork. I had to think, I had to kind of play the melody through in my head a little bit to imagine, well, what scale degree does it start on? And da 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 da. So I had to think da 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 bum bum. There's my tonic. How do I know that? I don't know, because I have enough experience playing melodies and relating them to the tonic. So I thought about that first note and said, okay, I think it starts on scale degree 3. So in the key of C, that'll be an E. And then I just hoped that I was right. And I'm just going up a C scale. And that was all steps. Steps are easy, right? Then step. That was all stepping up there. Then step down. Then step up. And then a small leap down. And I heard that leap. Then step up. Now there's a bigger leap. Bum, 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 bum. That was the one place that I had any doubt. I had to think, there's my tonic, right? There's scale degree 1. Right now I'm on an A. Bum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. I had to think about what that higher note was going to be. And I knew it was a leap. I knew it wasn't just to the tonic. That would have been just the tonic. I knew it was higher than the tonic, but it wasn't too high. So it wasn't C. In my mind, it was either a D or an E. In real time like that, I can't be thinking, here comes the bride, because it doesn't sound at all like Here Comes the Bride to me. That perfect fourth between scale degree 6 and what turned out to be, in fact, the case is scale degree 2. It was a D, scale degree 2. I just guessed. There's no way I was going to, like, in my mind, in the heat of playing Fool on the Hill, be able to figure out, oh, yeah, I can relate that to Here Comes the Bride. Even though Here Comes the Bride is scale degree 5 to 1, it's sol, do, 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 not la, re, 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 right? That is not how Here Comes the Bride goes, even though it's the same interval. So knowing that it was going to be a perfect fourth because of Here Comes the Bride, it didn't help me. I just had to figure out, did it sound like a leap to scale degree 2, or a leap all the way up to scale degree 3? And if I wasn't, like, I just had to guess. And if I missed, I would have come back down. If I guessed E, I just would have said, oh, that's too high, and then come back down, and you all would have said, oh, he made a nice little variation. That's what happens in improvisation. We guess, we miss, we fix. That is absolutely the process. But in this case, I guessed right. I guessed it was scale degree 2. If I had a little more time, what I would have thought was bum, ba-da-dum, and then thought da-dum. I would have thought in my head, how do I get back to the tonic? And would have realized it was just a step away. So if you're not improvising in real time, you're trying to play something, you're trying to figure out something by ear, and you have time to figure these things, then you absolutely can have a better chance of getting it right the first time by thinking it through first. So in any case, that was the one note that I had any doubt about. And then from there, it's all steps and playing notes I've already played. That's A, C, 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 because I could tell I was jumping to the tonic there. I really didn't have any other doubts. That was only that one leap that I had any doubt about. That was the only place where I felt like I was putting myself on the line. So that's a little bit about this process of thinking things through by ear. And the thing is, how do you get good at it? Just by practice. You don't get good at it by doing exercises of singing intervals. You don't get good at it by taking online quizzes. You get good at it by doing it. Pull out a keyboard, pull out a recorder, pull out whatever, and just try to play some melodies by ear. Cannot recommend it highly enough. That paper keyboard thing I had, I should have brought that with me, but that's useful too. And then you sing along with it. That's a great exercise too. Okay, so now I want to talk about the development of melody, because that's what I said I wanted to talk about a little bit today. And since I still have the recorder in my hand and I'm just playing that melody, I want to talk about that melody. And I don't even know if that's exactly the right rhythm. Ba-dum, ba-dum. I feel like that's the right rhythm for the recorder solo. These are ba-da-da-dum. There's a little rhythmic figure. Ba-da-da-dum. And then ba-da-da-dum. It's reusing the rhythmic motif, but with different pitches. All on one pitch. Then it's a scale going up, but with the top note repeated. Then it's going all the way up 4 notes. So it's repeating the same rhythmic motif, but with different pitches. They're all ascending. It's like staying on the first pitch and then ascending a little bit, and then the next one ascends more. So this idea that you might want to repeat, by the way, if you're hearing sounds, there's, this is a park. We are the family playing on the swings and so forth also. That's just part of the experience here. The idea of repeating a rhythmic motif, but with different pitches. powerful, powerful device. And in that case, the relationship between them was each one ascended a little more than the previous one did, right? And that's that idea that each one builds on the last one in some way. That's a super common melodic development device. Start with a simple motif, and then the next statement of it might be a little more complex. Next one might be a little more complex still. And yeah, your cat. That's the actual sound of the swing squeaking that we're hearing. There is what we're hearing, but it does sound quite a lot like a cat. All right, so Colleen, now I'm going to bring up your piece because I want to talk about your piece in that same context here. Okay, so yeah, did I not download it? Wait a minute. I guess I don't have it downloaded, so give me a moment while I come back to it. Gotta find your piece. I thought I had downloaded it, but I don't see it there. Maybe I accidentally put it in the wrong folder or something, but not a problem. So Colleen's piece is a composed solo. So I want to talk about what this really means for a moment, a composed solo. The idea is that in jazz, you normally have a chord progression and you improvise over it, right? That's a common thing that happens. You improvise over a chord progression. But as a learning device, and occasionally as a compositional device too, you might choose to actually compose a new melody over a chord progression. And of course, that's what we just did, right? In the context of that competition that we just concluded, it was writing a melody over an existing chord progression. Now, in that case, though, it was really wide open. You could change the key, you could change the timing, you could change the chords, you could do whatever you wanted, right? In a typical jazz context, no. You don't have all that kind of freedom. It's going to come at this tempo because you got the whole band playing with you, and they're all going to be playing the chords at that tempo in that key, and in that style. So you are going to improvise your melody in that context specifically. There's no alternative, really. So, but the idea that you might want to compose a solo rather than improvise one is quite a compelling technique as a kind of learning tool. Just want to get it in the corner, but that's okay. It's fine where it is. Is Colleen's melody there. And I just played the first two measures of it because I want to make some points about it. So this is a melody that she composed over this chord progression. And I guess if I hit play, that for me. So it keeps going on. I'm going to stop it and talk about different aspects of it. So this is a melody she composed over that chord progression. So it's as if it was an improvised solo, but it's not improvised. It's composed. And what that means is it's going to have some different attributes. A composed melody versus an improvised melody are, in principle, the same aesthetics apply, the same ideals apply. What makes a good melody? The ideals don't change whether it's improvised or composed, but the realities change. Okay, the realities of the situation change. So realistically, there's a couple things going on. So like here at the beginning, right there is a 2-bar motif, right? Check out what happens. The chord progression then, it's like a 16-bar chord progression that then repeats. And on the repetition, it's different. It's like A, B, A, C or something like that. So here's the return of the same chord progression. And she's using essentially the same melody, just with a slight variation in it. Well, that's common, expected in a composed melody, right? If you're going to return to a spot to like, an A form, you're going to use the same melody for each A section, or A, B, A, C, or at least a similar melody. That's expected when you're composing. But when you're improvising, that's not likely. I'm not saying it can never happen. I'm not saying it could never happen that you would play a melody at the beginning of an improvised solo and then 16 measures later remember the motif that you started with and come back to it. This starts to cross the line a little bit from ordinary improvisation to clever parlor tricks. I don't want to denigrate it. It's a great device, but it's one that how would I put it? It takes conscious effort to pull it off, to remember, okay, as I'm improvising this initial melody, I'm going to remember it, and now I'm going to come back to it 16 measures later when that chord progression happens. You can do that, but you definitely have to put conscious effort into it, and then other people will notice it, and other musicians will look at you and kind of smile. Oh yeah, he did that thing. He did that thing that we all sometimes like to try to do. So it's a fine device, but it is by no means expected. It just, generates a little smile when it happens. So instead of thinking in terms of actually reusing that material 16 measures later when that chord progression comes back, it's more about how do we develop the idea. And here again, the distinction between composed and improvised melodies it's not like there's different aesthetics, but there's different realities. So, Colleen, I know you mentioned during office hours, I'm going to play these first 4 measures. No, I'm going to play actually the first 8 measures. All right, there's the first 8 measures. This motif here, well, that motif is related to the motif that happens in bar 5. How do I say it's related? Well, they're both a stream of 8th notes, and it's a stream of 8th notes that doesn't start on beat 1, and it has a particular shape of essentially ascending and then descending. Yet your first one starts right on beat 2. Your second one starts on the and of 1. The first one is literally just ascending and then descending. The second one has this little curly cue in it. Well, this to me is the Fool on the Hill. It's the same idea. Start with a simple statement of the idea, then a more complex statement of the same type of motif. Well, that's what's going on here. You've got the simplest possible statement of the motif, and then here, see, this is why I don't like to play in flat keys, because it's like complicated fingerings, but that's only because I'm a wimp and haven't practiced. So this is, to me, showing off that exact idea of measure 5 relates to measure 1 in some way. It's a more complex version of the same basic idea. So now, Colleen, my question for you is, how conscious was that? And I'm going to guess that the answer is maybe not very. And maybe you were. I don't know. But one of the things that happens in improvising is it's actually really hard to not make sense if you're paying attention. If you are paying attention to what you're doing, if you're just moving your fingers around randomly, then yeah, you're not going to make any sense. But if you're actually engaged with the melodies that you're hearing in your head and really playing what's in your head, then what's going to happen is you just play. If you're improvising this melody, da 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 dum, that melody is now in your head. Bar 5 happens 10 seconds after bar 1. Well, whatever the tempo is, I could do the math on this. But in general, each in 4/4 time at quarter note equals 120. There's 4 quarter notes in a measure. I think I worked out, so that's basically 2 seconds. Each measure takes 2 seconds at 120, and this might as well, 116 might as well be 120. So bar 5 happens 8 seconds after bar 1. I guarantee while you're improvising, bar 1 was still in your head. It only happened 8 seconds ago. So because you just heard that melody, it's still in your head. Like right now, you're all still thinking about parks. You're thinking about the swings. You're thinking about the fool on the hill. You're thinking about internet connections. Or at least, maybe you're not actively thinking about them, but those thoughts are in your head because they just happened. And those things happened more than 8 seconds ago. The things that happened 8 seconds ago, I guarantee are still in our heads. So when you're improvising, you're going to naturally tend to reuse motifs. And now if you look at this measure here, here's an ascending only version of the same rhythm. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum, right? It's the same motif rhythmically, and it's all steps. So they're similar in that way, but one of them changes direction. One of them just ascends. And then this little motif here, check out this little relationship. Ba-do-do, ba. I want to play this. And then they're similar. Leap down, step up, step down. This motif here, leap down, step up, almost step down. In this case, it's a slight leap. So it's related rhythmically, related contour-wise, right? So this idea that this motif is developing itself it's a natural thing that happens when improvising, and this was a composed as opposed to improvised solo. But my guess here, and I could be wrong, I'm curious how long. I mean, if this had been improvised, then 32 measures at 116 tempo takes a minute. I mean, it takes a minute to play, it takes a minute to improvise, right? So it takes exactly as long to improvise as it does to play. Composing, it took you longer than a minute to compose that, right? I mean, otherwise there would be no distinction between composing and improvising. But my guess is that you spent less time improvising these 32 bars, composing these 32 bars, than you did on the Wynton Kelly tribute thing, whose name I've already forgotten. In any case, the melody that you composed based on Ma'al's tour, or however we pronounce that. So yeah, this melody probably took maybe less time than the other one to compose. I don't know. But if it was a couple hours, that's still a significant amount of time. So, but what it means is now you're repeating each idea in your head as you're composing, and you're going to have these relationships. They happen naturally. In office hours, you mentioned that this phrase here felt out of place to you, that it felt like you put it in there because you wanted to reference this particular lick that Wynton Kelly played, and you put it in there, but you weren't totally believing it. Well, okay. And I think it sounds that way because you notice I haven't been focusing on those. That motif doesn't relate so much to the previous one, and yet it does, right? This is slowly going up and then down. This is go down and then come back up fast, right? Slowly going up and down and go down and up fast. So it's the flip side of it, and it's faster. So it's related, but in a more complex type of way. Maybe it was just too soon for that. Maybe that's what you're responding to. No, I have nothing against that line. I think it's fine. I'm happy with that relationship. But if there's something that doesn't respond to you about it, maybe, just maybe, you would have been happier. Is it the same chords, first 4 bars and at bar 17? Maybe you would have been happier starting with bar 17. Had that, maybe you would have been happier with those as your first 4 bars because those feel a little more natural. Bars 3 and 4 here feels more like what I would do here at bar 19. and 20, because now we're getting maybe to the point of being a little tired of that motif and looking for something that really interrupts the flow a little more. And I feel that what's there in bars 3 and 4 here, that ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, that line might have felt really good at bars 18, at bars here, 19 and 20. So again, nothing wrong with the way it is, but maybe the thing that's making you feel like it's out of place, maybe it feels like a less welcome surprise as early as it is, and it might be more welcome a little bit later. That's a thought anyhow. Winsome Jelly. Okay, yeah, thanks. That's the name. So connection is intermittent. And yeah, I think we can probably blame my phone for that this time, and the whole phone internet connection thing. So sorry if that's going to be distracting, but that's life. Okay, so I really want to talk about this piece because it really is about this idea of developing a melody, and it makes a great example of this. Now, in the original description of what I was going to talk about today, and I want to make sure I talk about the things that I said I was going to talk about, I also mentioned that I wanted to talk about something having to do with sequences, and I wanted to talk about what am I looking for? I just want to go home. An Irving Berlin piece that Jim Ivey had posted an arrangement of. And so what I want to do is I actually want to go to the sequence first, because I think it relates more to what I actually want to talk about. So what I'm going to do is jump over to where that discussion was. And so this discussion was in the Practical Counterpoint course. So my Counterpoint course, some of you have taken it or are in the middle of taking it or whatever, but it's a really in-depth course talking about counterpoint, and some of the topics get really very technical, very involved. It's a very deep course. It's a college graduate level course, really. But some of the concepts in it are really quite powerful and simple. And some of the ideas in the imitation section is probably the best example of both extremes. It's got the most complex stuff in talking about how to actually do these canons, how to construct canons. Your brain starts to explode when you try to do the canon construction. But what I want to talk about here is this idea of sequence. And so the idea of sequences, and I'm just going to go ahead and open the actual lesson here. And I'll post a link to the lesson. And so if you're if you're an all access member, you'll have access to this. If you won't, you feel like joining or just enrolling in the course, go for it. Up, down, or repeated. Yep, that is absolutely true. That is an absolute true statement. It's more a question of how much you do of each. So yeah, if I say that something felt related up then down, the others down then up, but they were, the fact that it only went up and then only down, as opposed to changing direction a lot. And, there were certain things about that felt related to me. So this is the lesson on sequences. And so I posted the link in here in case someone wants to check it out more. But what came up in here was really quite interesting. And that's what I want to talk about here is this example that Frank Paul had worked out, and then Rod Woodhouse came and kind of modified some. So I'm going to play this, and then I will talk about what I wanted to do. So that example is the motif. Then the next measure, so I'm tonguing everything because I am. That's the original motif that Frank started with. It's Frank Paul, so it's confusing, but yeah, Frank Paul. Then the same motif is the exact same motif a step lower. That's what a sequence is. It's taking a motif and then repeating that entire motif a step lower. Now, this is a common form of melodic development. And the comment that I had given in the comments on the course was that the thing that made this a little not feeling quite as strong as it could have been is that it was abrupt. This is, that time I slurred, is in G, and it's totally in G, then is totally in F, right? And that going directly from the key of G to the key of F, you might say, well, gee, they're only a step apart. That should work. But yeah, but on the circle of fifths, they're 2 steps apart. We kind of want to follow the circle of fifths when we're modulating. When we're going through sequences, when you're doing modulations, typically the harmony wants to follow the circle of fifths. So I had made the observation that somehow you want to get the key of C to be worked in there, or at least a C chord between your G and your F. So Rod came and took that suggestion and ran with it and did a very literal application of what I described. Now C. Now F. Right? So he literally took G and then C. And then F. Right? So he literally took that motif into G and then into C and then into F. And that is absolutely a possibility when doing this thing that I'm talking about, this idea of following so I'm sorry, Dan, if it's cutting out, and I don't know if that's happening for everyone. Try refreshing your screen, Dan. So I'm going to suggest that because I have no way of knowing how much of the problem is at my end and how much isn't. And if anyone's having problems, try refreshing screen or leaving and coming back. Those are the 2 things that I recommend. And yeah, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. So this idea of taking that motif and literally moving it from the key of G, then into the key of C, and then the whole motif in G, the whole motif in C, and then the whole motif in F, that is absolutely a way of doing it. But that is not actually what I had in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you what I had in mind. Actually, well, let me see. I did load this into MuseScore, but I don't know if I ever saved it. And so if I didn't, then hello. No. Let me try this again. Looks like I didn't save the version that I did, but I will go ahead and make the change again and talk about what it is, because you really, in order, I could play it on the recorder, but you really miss something if you don't hear the whole deal. So really, I'm going to make just a couple of small changes here. Here's the original from Frank. Okay. And by the way, there's a system break here. I'm going to change that to a section break. And that way, MuseScore will automatically pause when we get to the end of it. So here under breaks and spacers, instead of using the system break or the page break, we're going to use the one that says section break. And now it will pause playback. It'll pause playback there. So that's a useful thing if you're trying to put together little things like this. What I want to do is I'm going to take this through the circle of fifths without actually repeating the entire motif in the key of C. What I'm going to do is I'm basically going to take this part and leave that in G. But starting here, I'm going to start this moving to C and then to F. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to do this. I'm going to use the circle of fifths. And what I'm going to do is really, I'm going to use chords. I'll put chord symbols in here. So this is, right now, we just have a G chord and then an F chord. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, in between them, put a C chord. Okay? So that is my first step. So in order to make this a C chord here, I'm looking at this and going, well, I don't want that B. I'm going to make this be a C. Okay? And now maybe I will just adjust this bass line to not, because right now his original bass line here, that's talking about a G chord. Well, I don't want to talk about a G chord. I want to talk about a C chord. So this line here is 3, 2, 1, 3 within the G chord. Well, I'm going to change that to 1, 2, 3, 1. Still using scale degrees 1 and 3, but now it's basically on a C chord. So I'm going to play you this version. So I'm going from a G chord to a C chord. And by the way, I'm going to turn off the playback of the chord symbols because we don't actually want to hear those playback. So here we go. I'm going to play this now. So this to me is a slight improvement. Just by changing that bass line, I have a C now. So now I hear the circle of fifths. I hear G, C, E, F. I hear that going on. Let me do that again. Okay. So, oh, by the way, I don't know if one thing about the audio I want to try that I probably should have tried before was just turning off my optimization, but leaving the echo cancellation on. I think this is actually the right call. So give me a second and see if when I play now, if that sounds any different to you, any better or any worse, let me know. I think maybe it makes my recorder playing and singing perhaps sound slightly better. That's in theory. So anyhow, this version here to me is slightly better. I would think that that's slightly better, and I'll do it without singing now. I'm going to turn up my volume so I can hear it better. So to me, that's slightly better, but it's still not all the way there. What I want now is to really increase the pull of the circle of fifths. These are major triads. It doesn't feel like we've changed keys necessarily. It just feels like we've got 3 chords in there, a G chord, then a C chord, and then an F chord. Well, if the piece was in the key of C, that might be a thing. That's 5 to 1 and then 4. But the piece was really in G. If I want this to really feel more like it's modulating from G to C and then modulating from C to F, I want to do a little more surgery here. I want to put in some more chords. I want there to be a G7 to tonicize the C. Then after my C, I'm pressing semicolon to move beat by beat now. I'm going to use a C7 to tonicize the F. So now G, G7, C, and then from C, C7, F. This is really going to help smooth that transition. To make this happen, I don't have to do a whole lot. I'm going to change that F sharp to F natural and this F sharp to an F natural. By the way, this E here doesn't really need to be there. I think I'd rather have that be a B, but I really feel like the G chord, ba-da-da-dum, that also helps me reach the C. And now, the C7, I talk about a C7 chord, that means instead of B natural, I can start having some B flats. And I feel like just those changes are going to make a difference. I feel like just that is, I feel like that's going to really make this start to sound smoother. Right? That is what sequences, when I talk about sequences and moving around the circle of fifths, this is what I'm talking about. So the idea is that I am not playing the entire sequence in G, and then the entire sequence in C, and then the entire sequence in F. The sequence itself goes from G to C within the sequence, so that when the sequence starts over again, on the second iteration of the sequence, we are already in the key of F. We've moved by step. The important point here is that if your sequence is moving by steps, steps are all well and good melodically, but on the circle of fifths, you want to go by fifths. So going down a step really means getting that other thing in there. Going from G to C, going from G to F is only a step away, but it's 2/5 away. So you want to go from G to C before you get to F. So you make your C happen while you're still in that motif. Then you come out of it in F. This is what we are looking for. And that, when I say we are looking for, well, that's what I'm looking for. But I make the point here that this is, and that this is, then I showed that exact example. I also point out that that's not actually that common to go from the key of G to the key of F, because they are unrelated keys. They're 2 steps apart on the circle of fifths. Bach doesn't do that pretty much ever, but he would go from G minor to F major. G minor to F major is, well, G minor is 1 flat. I mean, G minor is 2 flats, and F major is 1 flat. They're only 1 step apart on the circle of fifths, 1 tick apart from G minor, because think, G minor is related to B flat major. B flat major and F are adjacent on the circle of fifths. So Bach would do that modulation from B flat major to F major all the time, or from G minor. And so I'm going to bring up here that example that I mentioned here, the F major fugue. So I have all of Bach's fugues here. They were all done in MuseScore years ago as part of a project called the Open Well-Tempered Clavier, in which there was nice editions made of all the Bach Well-Tempered Clavier preludes and fugues. So I just need to find that folder. It's under Open Score, and then Open WTC. And now I have to remember which fugue is F major. So if C major is 1, C sharp major is 3, D is 5, E flat is 7, because the minors are the evens. I already lost track. 1, 3, I'm going up the keyboard here. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. I'm going to say it's 11. And if I'm wrong, I'll just open another one. But I think this will be the one. Yes, this is F major. All right. And so what I'm showing here is a little excerpt taken from bar 56. So let me jump to bar 56 and find that spot. This might be showing me the prelude 56. I don't know. Yeah, I think it is. So let me just find bar 56 for real. It's right here. Way too fast. Let's start that guy over. Let's put in a little tempo marking here at the beginning, so when I and let's slow it down to, say, 60. This is Bach's F major fugue. And so again, go back to measure 56 right here. And I'll go ahead and make it so it starts right on the line so it's easier to see right here. So this is that thing. Here we have our sequence. And then here we have it repeated in F. And so so in F. So he has the sequence in G and then the sequence in F. He doesn't exactly have the sequence, but in the middle is a C chord. Right? So in the middle is the C chord. And you'll notice this thing that Bach did. He has the top voice imitate the middle voice, right? The sequence was in the middle voice. Middle voice has, I'm having to play it an octave higher, right? which is actually 2 octaves higher because of recorder. But boo, boo, ba, ba, da, 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 is the middle voice, and then boo, ba, ba, da, 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 repeating it a step lower. But meanwhile, he has the top voice. He has the top voice actually imitate that middle voice. So he does do the thing that Rod did of taking that motif in G, then that motif in C, and then that motif in F, but not in the same voice. That is the key to this contrapuntal use of sequencing, because sequences normally don't imply necessarily that you've got multiple voices. You could have, you know, a single saxophone player improvising a jazz solo uses sequences all the time, and typically you work it out so that, you know, it just works out that way, that when you repeat it, it's a step lower and it fits that chord. If you're composing one here, expect it to work that way I described, where it goes from a G minor, and then leads you to F. So the sequence, the motif there is a 2-measure motif. Boo doo da 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 dum. Doo doo ba doo 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 dum is the key. Boo bum ba da 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 dum is the motif that takes you from G minor to C. And then that motif repeats in F. But while that motif is sitting there on the E, and then the other voice, the voice 1, is now repeating that motif in C. So if you have 2 voices, you can have that thing, and then it keeps going. Check out what happens in the next measure. I didn't stop it there. I shouldn't have stopped it there. So he does it again, right? He lets the top voice do that. But if you look at just the bottom voice, or just the middle voice, it's G. And then it's in G, then F. If you look at just the top voice,